Da, 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 da! Happy New Year! Okay, crazy hats aside, crazy goggles aside. I hope you guys had a wonderful New Year's Eve, that you're still enjoying your break. But I just wanted to jump in quickly to say, oh my goodness, we made it to 2024, which is just a wee bit mind blowing for me and those of us here at Dataspire. Um, but we're thinking about you and we're hoping your break is going well. And just a quick note or kind of a comment of things that are going on in my household that have my brains thinking, yes, total data nerd. Even when I'm on break and even when I'm playing with my kiddos, my brain can't stop. I'm just constantly spinning on things. And partially it is because I have map loving children. They, especially my fifth grader, he loves maps, absolutely loves maps. And some super cool maps have just landed in my house, and we have just been geeking out about them and thinking about them and daydreaming of trips coming up and different things that we might do and talking about places that we've been and doing some exploring. Well, many of you know we just recently moved across the country, so we're still in like, whew, our space is totally new and we're figuring it out. But it got me thinking also about you all and how we can support our students better as they are making sense of spatial data and looking at it. And so the maps that have landed in my household are point maps, in that they have geographic locations and there are certain spots on the maps that are highlighted, like city locations, things like that. There are also, so those are the individual points. So on my map, it is just giving me a geologic, a spatial recognition of where I am in space and where other things are in space. I actually, sorry, backtrack. I have to identify where I am in space on that map, but I have some benchmarks that I can look at. I can look at city names. I can look at state names in the United States. I can look at country names. These are all things that are on our world map that is now shown up on my wall. But also mountain ranges, ocean basins, deserts, different sort of ecosystem features in the world also show up on my world map. But what we got that got me thinking as I was talking through and nerding out with my third and fifth grader on these maps over the last couple of days is, that's great. This is huge. You need to understand latitude and longitude and how that all comes together, which is a great connection for those of us using maps in social studies and in science, to help make that connection, tie that in to the XY coordinate plane for our learners in fifth grade and above. Once they are learning that, to help them see these are similar things. It's just we call it latitude and longitude when we've plotted the data on a geographic map. But there are also a couple other types of maps that show up a lot that require a different cognitive engagement, understanding, working with those maps. So, some of the ones that show up a lot, and this one kind of shows up on our map that's showing up, our world map that has shown up. This is called a choropleth. So, this is a map I imagine, super familiar with them. They show up a lot in November every year in our country because we vote in November. And so, in a chloropleth, your students certainly don't need to know that word unless they're like taking geologic information systems or understanding mapping like up in our high school. But it's helpful for them to understand that the geographic region is colored by a variable or an attribute. Now, in November, very often that variable or attribute is party line, either of the politician that won a specific race or by the percent, the top percentage of votes by a certain political party. Hence our blue and red maps that often show up. So that's a category, right? Here in the United States, it's Democrat versus Republican, blue and red that we have showing up on our maps a lot, on our chloropleth maps. And so the geographic region, it can be a neighborhood, it can be a city, a county, a state, a country. It doesn't matter, but it's a predefined geographic region. And then we color that region in based on the value of a variable or attribute. It can also be, so Democrat, Republican here in the United States with our election maps is a category. It can also be of a numeric variable, of a number. So it could be the percent of people that are voting for something, or the number of households that are in certain economic brackets, or different things like that. And so it can all the color scheme can also be based in a number value of a numeric variable or attribute. This is different than a point map that is just noting a geographic feature or noting a geographic location. So we need to make sure that our students, when we're looking at these choropleth maps, which are really common, they show up in a lot of our social studies and science curriculum in the middle school and high school grades, especially, that they understand, that they orient to that the color is connected to that attribute and not to the size of the color on the map. Because the amount of color, the size of any of one of these pieces, is determined by that preset geographic space that we humans have set. So, for example, how much purple there is in Alaska does not necessarily mean that there is more of whatever purple is representing in Alaska than in Hawaii, because Hawaii is just a smaller state. It takes up less area than Alaska does. But this is a key part of orienting our students in to what these colors represent as they are working with it and looking at a choropleth map. Okay, one other thing that's kind of similar that had me thinking about this as I was sort of diving down the rabbit hole is thinking about choropleth maps and helping our students realize this, like, amount of color isn't necessarily what's coming from the variable, but that is sent by the geographic region. Another one is our bubble maps. So these are really similar to point maps that our students get really used to seeing, and that we're really used to seeing as, like, kind of on Google Maps or whatever, Siri or whatever you're using to drive around, these location-based maps that we often use. But a bubble map is kind of more like a choropleth in that the size of the bubble is representing a number value for a numeric variable. And so here, the size of the bubble, the amount of the color that is showing up, does represent a difference between two locations. So in this example, if the bubble were a lot bigger, if that purple bubble was a lot bigger in Alaska than it is in Hawaii, that does represent a numeric difference between. And so we use these maps, we represent lots of data by the color or the bubble size that's going on in the maps, and helping make sure our students have that initial orientation can really help. Okay, that was my total geek out about maps. Really, all to say, just wanted to jump in quickly and say Happy New Year, Happy 2024. We here at Dataspire are so impressed with everything that you all do. It's been such an honor working with you in 2023, and we cannot wait for what is to come in the new year, working with you, supporting you, providing more resources. Reach out if there are things that you're looking for that we haven't yet dropped yet. Super excited, and enjoy today and the last day of your break for some, or however many more days that you have of winter break.